I'm Lee Morcus. I'm one of the team here at the Chop House at the Jackalope Ranch. I got started in this business. I was born in this business. My grandfather had a small grocery store in a very small town in southern Colorado, headwaters of the Rio Grande. And behind the grocery store was the house with 3 generations of family living in it. My grandmother cooked 2 meals a day. We made our own butter, cheese, baked our own fresh bread, etc. Old-fashioned Lebanese household. It was a farm. So my grandfather grew his own hay and alfalfa, cows, we milked. So my earliest memories were either in my grandmother's kitchen, my grandfather's butcher shop, or in the fields with my grandfather and the cows. So that's how I got into this business. And if I talk about some of the signature bone-in cuts we have, I'd start with the lamb, because we have an amazing rack of lamb, New Zealand rack. It's a whole rack. Being Lebanese, we ate as much lamb as we did beef, so I've always been very partial to lamb. And with that said, you know, our lamb has to be pretty darn good if I'm going to eat it. So we have a beautiful rack of lamb. So our pork chop is 100% Berkshire. It's also known as the Kurabuta. It's a long bone pork rack. It's the best of the best. But when people think of steaks and chops, naturally they gravitate towards beef. So the cuts that I'm most fond of are our bone-in cuts. We have beautiful fillets and New York steaks and ribeye steaks and, you know, boneless steaks. But my personal favorites are the tomahawk ribeye chop. It's 3 pounds. Comes in a long bone rib. It's called a 103 rib. It's 3 pounds, serves 2 guests, 2.5, 3 inches thick. It's beautiful. If you like medium rare, you can get this beautiful array of color from the outside in. It's moist, tender, juicy, and it's the ribeye, so it's got a little bit more fat in it, which translates to juice and flavor and richness, and many people like that. We have a porterhouse, which comes off the short loin. So the best way to describe a porterhouse is it's got a T-bone in it. It's also known as a T-bone if it's a little further down the short loin when it's cut. But on one side, it's got the filet on the bone. On the other side, it's got the New York on the bone. So our 2 most popular steaks have always been filet and New York strip. So here you've got them both on the bone, which again adds juice, richness, depth, flavor, texture, etc. It's one of my personal favorites. People ask me if I have a favorite, and I say yes, the one I'm eating now. We do a bone-in filet, which is very difficult to cut, very expensive. If you like a regular filet, the bone-in is just unbelievable because, again, the bone brings moistness and richness and juice and tenderness. So it's like a filet, but it tastes even more like a filet because of the process of cooking it on the bone and what the bone brings to the flavor of the meat. We have a cowboy rib chop, which is a ribeye on a bone. It's not the tomahawk. This is cut for 1. We have a Kansas City, New York steak or chop, which is a bone-in New York. If you like the regular New York, the bone-in is superlative to me. And I would not be complete, this conversation wouldn't be complete if we didn't discuss the seafood or the chicken. It's Mary's chicken. It's never been frozen, 100% organic. Tastes like real chicken. It's not fed any of the other things I mentioned earlier. It was alive the day before we receive it, 2 days before we receive it maximum. Air dried, which most chickens are what they call brine chill, which they dunk them in a very cold saline solution, which adds salt to the meat, to the chicken. It adds weight, and in some ways it serves to dry and take the natural juices out of that meat. So this Mary's chicken, Jadori chicken if you will, is air chilled, and it stays moister, more juicy, more flavorful. It doesn't get salty, and it just tastes more like chicken. Not only do they taste better, but they're better for us. And that's the interesting thing about food, is oftentimes the better it tastes, the better it is for the body, because we're using the best ingredients, the way that nature intended them to be. I want to control that, because if I can control that, I can control the quality and deliver a higher quality product for our guests. So You know, that's what we're about.